I want to welcome everyone back to the Soil Health Conference. We have Dr. Ratan Lal ready for his presentation. So as everyone is joining, we will get started here in a few seconds. Okay. Dr. Lal, I really want to express our appreciation for you joining the 5th Annual Soil Health Conference. The opportunity that we have to hear you speak in person is an amazing for us. We really appreciate it. Dr. Lal is from Ohio State University, and I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be a participant for the 2021 Soil Health Conference. It's a very important topic, so I would appreciate feedback, discussion, any comments. I'll try to answer any question. I'm going to begin with Wendell Berry. He said, the soil is a great connector of lives, the source and destination of all. The source and destination of all life. You understand how nice that statement is the healer and restorer and resurrector by which disease passes into health, age into youth, death into life. Without proper care of it, we can have no community, because without proper care of it, we can have no life. I think that says quite a lot about soil. From a farmer's perspective, land manager perspective, I'd like to share with you kind of a poem by Hall. A rainbow of soil is under our feet, red as a barn and black as a peat. It's yellow as lemon and white as snow, bluish gray, so many colors below. Somehow I can't proceed further. Okay, I got it. Hidden in the darkness as thick as the night, the only rainbow that can form without light. Dig you a pit or bore you a hole, you'll find enough color to well rest your soul. I think that's very nice, telling us soil has all types of properties and color, and its color reflects the process in which soil is formed. Darker the color, the more productive the soil. Soil organic matter content is what makes it dark and productive. And that's the topic of my talk. Soil organic matter is the fraction of the soil that consists of plant and animal tissue in various stages of breakdown or decomposition by biogeophysical and biogeochemical processes. And the soil organic matter consists of 4 components: fresh residues, active fraction or decomposing residue and organic matter, stabilized organic matter that doesn't decompose much further, and of course the living organisms in the soil. And a healthy soil has about a 4 to 5 metric ton of living organism per hectare. Hectare is about 2.5 acres. Soil organic matter and its importance goes way back millennia. And one of the things I picked up was from Spain, a Moorish philosopher, Spain in 12th century. He wrote, the first step in science of agriculture is the recognition of soils and how to distinguish that which is of good quality and that which is of inferior quality. He who does not possess this knowledge lacks the first principles and deserves to be regarded as ignorant. I'm glad this 2021 conference being organized will take care of that ignorance, if there was any, which I don't think is. But this goes on further to say one must also take into consideration the depth of the soil, for it often happens that its surface layer may be black. And that goes back to the rainbow color that I mentioned to you earlier, and why a black soil is productive because of its organic matter content. In the US in 1938, we had a very first book of the USDA handbook, Soils and Men. And it says by the then president of the Soil Society of America, Albrecht, soil organic matter is one of our most important natural resources. Its unwise exploitation has been devastating, and it must be given its proper place in any conservation policy as one of the major factors affecting crop production in the future. He was talking about that in the 30s. We are going to talk about the policy somewhat today. How can we consider in our farm bill now coming next in a couple of years, soil organic matter management and payment to farmer for ecosystem services? Albert went on to say, declining soil fertility due to lack of organic material, major elements and trace mineral is responsible for poor crops and in turn of poor people. That link people and soil is very, very important. And he brought out in 1938 as then president of the Soil Science Society of America. He also said, health of our nation may be impossible to restore without first restoring the health of our soil. This, as you remember, the 30s was the Dust Bowl era. So he is referring here health of soil in relation to the future health of the people. In a book that I read many times during early 70s when I was beginning my work in Africa on soil organic matter and its management by Ellison. And he used the word el-iksir, which is obviously Arabic, and it means recipe. And that's where the English word elixir comes from. Original Arabic word el-iksir. Soil organic matter has over the centuries been considered by many as an elixir of life. Ever since the dawn of history, some 8,000 and more years ago, man has appreciated the fact that dark soils commonly found in river valleys and broad level plains are usually productive soils. He also realized at a very early stage that color and productivity are commonly associated with organic matter derived chiefly from decaying plant materials. So that tells us that how soil and life are related through organic matter content. In fact, it takes me back to Charles Kellogg, USDA scientist in the 60s and 70s. He said essentially all life depends upon the soil. There can be no life without soil and no soil without life. They have evolved together. I would like to take a step further. Rhizosphere is the soil-root interface. That's where the root mixes with soil for the transfer of nutrients and water. That's called rhizosphere at a nanoscale. Rhizosphere is the only place in the universe where death is resurrected into life. Life and death are two sides of the same coin. In this case, coin happens to be a productive, healthy soil. And that's how it looks like. I was pleased to see the previous presentation, very last few slides, where he picked up the soil and was showing how rich and fluffy it is. And here is an example of soil as a living thing full of roots, earthworms, termites, centipedes, millipedes, microorganisms, more biodiversity than the Amazon altogether. That brings me to the question of soil health. Soil health in the modern sense, and I'm taking my own definition, which I wrote in 2016. Soil health is a soil capacity as a dynamic and biologically active entity within natural and managed landscape, both, to sustain many ecosystem services such as production, food, nutritional quality, biodiversity, water purification, filtration and renewability, carbon sequestration, air quality, atmospheric chemistry, elemental cycling for both human and nature. The reason I shared with you my definition rather than that of John Doran, which were done in 1995 through the Soil Science Society of America, because some of the recent concern about the carbon sequestration and its impact on climate change and in nature, on nature, were not in that definition. Human are part of nature. Therefore, if nature benefits, human benefit also. And we cannot dissociate those two. And that brings me to another very popular quotation from Joseph Crutch. If we do not permit the earth to produce beauty and joy, it will in the end not produce food either. So please understand the link, which is very important, between soil organic matter content, soil quality in relation to soil functionality, and its impact on soil health and in relation to human health. That is one continuum. And the common link of all that is organic matter, soil organic carbon. And it affects that functionality of the soil by moderating its physical properties, water, air, structure, erosion control, chemical properties, especially nutrients, their transformation, their retention, availability and uptake. Biological properties are already mentioned, microbiota, macroorganism, and ecological properties, elemental cycling, productivity, erosion control, and all interconnection between them, which depend on soil organic matter content. To go one step further, the health of soil, plants, animals, human, environment, and the planet is one and indivisible. If the health of soil goes down, the health of everything else goes down with it. Therefore, when we talk about food security, we always think about socioeconomic factors, which are very important, absolutely important, no question about it. But we must not ignore the environment. The idea of food producing more and more and more and more is okay. It's fine with me, as long as we do not sacrifice the environment. The important thing here is to reconcile the need to produce more and nutritious food with the absolute necessity of restoring, improving, sustaining, and maintaining the environment. And the environment has three components at least: soil, water, and air. That trinity is very important. And I'll come back to that for the end of this talk. Again, we also have disease suppressive soil. Disease suppressive soil is a soil which, because of its high biodiversity, which is supported by organic matter content, it suppresses the incidence and severity of certain diseases because of the presence of organisms that predate on pathogens. So a disease suppressive soil created often by very good compost added into the soil, a mature compost, is really another reason how increasing organic matter content can reduce the dependence on chemicals, both nutrients and herbicides and pesticides. And that's a very important part. And one simple way to express this is, here you got soil organic matter, and that fully drives water resources, quality and quantity, climate change mitigation, adaptation, stabilization, food security, both in terms of quantity and nutritional quality, and of course the biodiversity, both above ground and below ground. And that is why management of organic matter content is so important, because this is what Cindy gave me the title. It is the heart of the soil health. And it is indeed heart of the soil. There is No other word which can describe the importance of organic matter. How can we, the land managers and the farmers, which I think are the largest, biggest, most important steward of natural resources, is the farmers, is the land managers. I would suggest minimize the tillage and avoid reduce fuel combustion. Maximize nutrient cycling. So you can reduce fertilizer input. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Conserve water in the root zone. So you can reduce irrigation. Create a disease suppressive soils. So you can minimize the pesticide use and increase and enhance sustainable production so that we can increase plant growth and human well-being. So those are the basic principles of soil management. So what is then the sustainable soil management? You must replace what you remove in the harvest or by erosion or whatever else may happen. Replace them. Soil is like a bank account. It's no difference. If you want your bank account to be improved, go up. What you put into that account must be more than what you withdraw. Soil bank account of whether it's organic matter or nutrients in the same way. What you put into it must always be more than what you withdraw. Just to be sure that you are not depleting it. Negative budget of carbon or nutrient is not a good idea. Maintaining the balance is good, but as far as the carbon is concerned, because our soils are depleted, it's good to have a positive budget. And I'll come back to that in a moment. We must respond wisely to what is changing both due to human activity and climate. Climate change because of extreme events, drought, flood, heat waves, many other things. We must be able to predict what may happen because of the human perpetration or natural changes that may happen. And we must always think about producing more from less. Less land, less water, less pesticides, less herbicides, less energy, less carbon emission. And we should save land, water, resources for nature. Why nature? We have 8.7 million species. One species, us, takes already more than 40% of what is naturally produced every year. Save for other inhabitants of the planet. We should have a continuous soil cover. We should have minimum soil disturbance. We should have integrated nutrient management, and we should have complex cropping systems that are based on cover crops in the off cycle so that we can always restore soil organic matter by regenerative agriculture and eco-intensification. So we can produce more from less. That's the idea behind it. That brings me to the question of regenerative agriculture. It's the one that is inspired by eco-innovation. It's powered by non-carbon energy, driven by a circular economy, recycling, green infrastructure, and supported by the recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere, that the soil and vegetation at the bedrock of sustainable development. People ask me what it is. Well, we have 300,000 known soil types. To think that there's a one type of regenerative agriculture might be too naive. But there are certain basic principles which are universally applicable. And that's something we'll talk about it in a moment. So regenerative agriculture is a system-based principle of producing adequate and nutritious food with the necessity of restoring the environment and making farming a solution to environmental issues. Farming is often blamed for causing a lot of problems. That is not correct attitude. You can blame the farming as long as you think you will not be eating food anymore. That's okay. But if we like to eat food 3 times a day, it is our obligation to make farming a solution to the environment. And that's the attitude I like to think about and promote and reward those who will do that. making agriculture a solution. You can't do without agriculture otherwise. Regenerative agriculture encompasses a wide range of practices, including grazing practices, but they all have one thing in common: restore soil health. It's a restoration of soil health that gives that particular title to it. And there is no one size fits all because there are so many types of soil. But the idea of all of them may be a system-based conservation agriculture, such as no-till farming, in conjunction with residue mulching, cover cropping, integrated nutrient pest management, and of course, if possible, wherever possible, integrating crops with trees and livestock. Examples of regenerative agriculture, many. Conservation agriculture is one which consists of no-till, residue mulch, cover cropping, complex rotation, integrated nutrient management, pest management, aerobic direct seeded rice, drip fertigation. It consists of integrating crops with trees and livestock, managed grazing, agroforestry, lay farming, fodder trees, silvopasture, live fences, many other things, and of course, restoration of soil health through land degradation neutrality. If you degrade land someplace, restore equal amount elsewhere, so everything is neutral. And afforestation of denuded lands, especially steep land, wetland restoration, conservation reserve program. Many of you may be familiar with that already. We had 40 million acres of it in the recent past. And the soil carbon sequestration through biochar, organic both and the inorganic carbon both, and of course the sequestration of biomass. Those are basic concepts on which the regenerative agriculture can be built and may vary from place to place, but the concept is restore soil health through regenerative farming. We really need this change in a paradigm shift. We need to bring about this change in thinking. And to this reason, your conference is very critical. To answer the question, what would I suggest to make land management a solution to environmental issue? The logical response would be to objectively and critically consider how do we take land resources for granted and use them as a property without any rights. You probably understand what I'm referring to when somebody used something as a property and that property has no rights. It would be impossible to keep global temperature at safe level unless there's a radical transformation in the ways by which humans produce and consume their food and manage the Earth's finite and fragile land resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has created urgency about the need of strengthening local food sources, which are more resilient and are based on recycling, bio-waste, and gray-black water, and also involve soil-less systems wherever possible. A prudent strategy would imply making land and agriculture an integral part of the solution and empowering farmers and land managers to restore degraded lands, afforest the denuded lands, and return some marginal land back to nature so that at least 50% of the land is under natural ecosystems. We need that buffer between us and nature so that we do not have more pandemics as we have been gripped since last year. We need nature to protect us. We cannot keep encroaching upon nature. We must give back some. We don't need so much. We waste at least 1/3 of the food produced. We produce 3 billion tons of grains. 1 billion tons reaches no stomach, animal or human. Why produce? Producing and wasting from this perspective is a crime against nature. We must stop that crime. Every soil has a threshold critical level, and that is a range. And the range of critical level of organic matter is somewhere between 2.5 to 3.5%, 4% in some cases. But many of our degraded soils, which especially those which are prone to erosion, such as we talked about the Dust Bowl time, maybe 1%, maybe 0.5%, If I go to some of the developing countries, which I know in Africa and Central America and the Caribbean and the Andean regions and South Asian region, maybe 0.1% some cases, those soils certainly have a lot of potential to restore to the optimum range and minimize the input dependency on those soils. So degraded cropland, we must restore by creating a positive carbon budget, which I already mentioned, like a bank account. The gains of that carbon into the soil must be more than the losses withdraw. Gains can be by many things: biochar, compost, cover crop, root biomass, crop residue, and the losses happen by erosion, leaching, decomposition. Minimize the losses and increase the gains. We do not want the other way around. That leads to depletion of soil health and degradation of soil quality. And then when it degrades, we try to overcome that, offset that by adding fertilizers and pesticides and tillage and irrigation. And that's not a way to do it. Restore soil health and minimize the dependence. Rate of carbon sequestration globally, I'm giving you a picture, about 400 pounds per acre. In South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, maybe about 500 pounds per acre. Brazil, something similar. And many, many experiments globally have indicated somewhere about half a ton per hectare, 500 to 600 pounds. I know many good farmers will say, well, we can do a lot better. I'm sure you can. I'm giving you the average values. The best I have seen is somewhere about 1 ton per hectare, 1.5 ton per hectare, which come to about 1,000 to 1,500 pounds per acre per year. But we can improve those rates. If we did, here's an example from Ohio. In 2012, we had a drought and we had a hydrological experiment at Shockton, Ohio, where one of my brilliant students, who is a faculty member somewhere in the western part of the states, Josh is about 6'7", 6'8". Here is a no-till which has been going on since 1970s. And in 2004, we began to take away the crop residue for biofuel, co-combustion, for industry, ethanol, or whatever reason. And this is what the crop looked like with the same fertilizer rate, same time of planting, same no-till farming, and exactly 10 feet away was the plot where the residues were always left behind. So crop residue maintenance, cover cropping is really what we call climate smart agriculture. I don't like the word climate smart. That means there's a climate stupid agriculture, and that word stupid is not right. So I would call it climate resilient soil and agriculture. And here is a cover crop of winter rye, corn grown through it. We can have cover crops of legumes. The idea is, rather than NPK fertilizer, we should think about CNPK. And if you put it C emphasis more, the need for NPK will become less and less over time, much less, because we can save resources. So I like to have a plant which have a robust root system, deep, and it has association with mycorrhizal, and very good combination for deep recycling and uptake of water and nutrients. Plant, hopefully, which is also adaptable to the environment, and we can communicate with the plant through some kind of molecular-based signals, like ants communicate with one another through pheromones, similar kind of thing, and we can detect those signals by remote sensing, and we can intervene before something serious happens. And always keep the ground covered by mulch, don't take it away. Grow a cover crop, and wherever possible and feasible, integrate crops with trees and livestock to strengthen recycling. Improve the organic matter content, so soil becomes disease suppressive because of high biodiversity. And if you need, over and above this, more water and nutrients at a critical stage, apply them at a time through the root as needed, through drip fertigation or other technology, so that whatever you apply is absorbed, most of it, by plants and doesn't leak out into the environment. that leakage into the environment through volatilization, through runoff, through seepage, through erosion must be stopped. Our use efficiency of whatever inputs we make, whether it's water or nutrients or whatever, must be very high. Increasing the rate and maintaining a lower efficiency is not a good option. And for that efficiency, we need organic matter content in the soil. I did survey of the literature, find out if you increase carbon in root zone by 1 ton, how much yield increase you can get even at the same level of fertilizer input. I find corn 100 to 300 pounds per acre, kilogram per hectare, the same thing. Soybean about 20 to 50, wheat 20 to 70, rice 10 to 50, sorghum, millet, all crops. Their yield can be improved because soils have become better and healthier. I calculated that in developing countries where I had a focus on improving food security, especially in Africa, we could increase production by 30 to 50 million tons simply by increasing organic matter content, because average increase in crop yield was about 40 to 100 pounds per acre or 40 to 100 kilogram per hectare. And if you increase carbon, say over a generation, 20 year, 10 tons, you really got it made in terms of the food security and meeting the demands of the growing population. Many times question is raised, can you save nitrogens? You certainly can. I took example from University of Nebraska, about 10-year-old data, where they found that each additional % of organic matter in soil would save 31 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare, or 31 pounds of nitrogen per acre. And at about $1.50 per kilogram, this is an old cost, old price, obviously 12-year-old. They calculated at that time, it would save about $40, $50 per hectare. That's about $20 per acre. Here is another estimate, global scale, especially from Europe, increasing soil organic matter by 0.5% to 1%, from 0.5 to 1%, could reduce nitrogen fertilizer input by 50%. 50%. So here's another. How much? So I already mentioned saving of fertilizer by putting C before NPK. Here I want to give you an example of water saving. And here's the data from different sources. Each cubic foot of soil can hold an additional 1.5 quarts of water, plant available, by increasing organic matter content by 1%. Another research showed that soil can hold an extra 16,500 gallons of water, plant available, when you increase organic matter content. Another one said increasing organic matter from 1 to 2% will increase the volume of water 3 quarts per cubic foot of soil. And somebody said compost can hold 20 times its weight. As we speak, I do have an experiment going on to find out exactly, does compost really hold 20 times more water? Probably within the next 2 or 3 months, I'll publish the data from my own lab so that I know exactly what happened. But these are some of the things people say. If we did this better agriculture throughout the world, and we try to find out how much carbon can we sequester between now and 2100, 80 years from now, at the average rate of all the global soil degraded, polluted, eroded, those which can be managed properly and restored, at the rate of about 2.5 gigaton of carbon per year on a global scale. Total amount we can sequester between now and 2100 is 180 gigaton, 178. At the same time, if you grow forest and denuded lands and sloping lands and hills where there was a forest 100 years ago, but we lost it, another 155. Together, 333 gigaton, that translates into drawdown of CO2 more than 150 parts per million. So colleagues, if we find no carbon fuel sources and we stop putting carbon in soil and vegetation, it is absolutely possible to limit global warming to below 2 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. We must begin now. We can't wait. Both things. It's not either or. We must find no carbon alternative to fossil fuel, and we must put carbon back in soil and vegetation that we have lost in the historic past. If we did that, right now we have 700 million hectare of land area under cereal production globally. Rather than bringing more land, we can actually return 200 million hectare, 500 million acre back to nature by 2100. Total fertilizer we use right now is 200 million tons in the world. There is no reason why it has to be even more than 100. Can be much less. And at the same time, our production can go up dramatically. That is the idea of producing more from less. I know population is increasing. I know per capita calorie going to go up, but we are producing a lot more already, but we waste more. Not only we waste food, we also waste water, we also waste land and natural resources, and we have to think about saving. Saving for who? For nature. And when nature benefits, we benefit. Use the best, save the rest. Send it back so that we have a buffer between us and the nature. I would like to think 3 options how to follow this legally or through the management option or what a decision we might make. So one idea is stewardship. The other option is economic incentive to land manager and the legal approach. 3 options. Let's briefly talk about stewardship. Soil stewardship and care, and it doesn't matter what religion you belong in, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Buddhism. In fact, I have made a table. I may have sent a PDF to Cindy. If not, I can send it also. I took all the religion and found out where, what paragraph, what religions said about stewardship. If there is one thing in common in each and every religion that I could find, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, others, and that is the stewardship of natural resources, Mother Earth, Terra Matre. Therefore, soil stewardship and care must be embedded in every fruit and vegetable eaten, in each grain ground into the bread consumed, in every cup of water used, in every breath of air inhaled, in every scenic landscape cherished. That's what our scriptures tell us. I'm very, very impressed with Pope Francis. He has really come up in his encyclic very strongly in favor of protecting the natural resources. This is where perhaps we should think about, should the prices of the commodity reflect the soil degradation that is sometimes caused? And I think that might be something to think about, probably through payment for ecosystem services. How much payment? I'm thinking about $40 to $60 per hectare, and I'll come in a moment. That's about $20 to $30 per acre in a moment, but I'll come back and explain you how I got it. I think we need to think about rights of soil. Just as universal rights of human, rights of animals, there must also be rights of soil. Soil is a living thing. So how can we treat the soil as we wish if it's a living thing? Being the essence of all life, and we discussed that, every life depends on soil. Soil must have the right to be protected, restored, thrive, and managed judiciously. And that is what could be possibility. We can also think about farming carbon, that is growing soil carbon as a commodity. Just like you sell corn and soybean, milk or beef or whatever else, you can also sell carbon. Right now, the carbon trading is not a very good option in the US. Market collapsed. It started in 2000. It went up to about $4 per ton of CO2 and then collapsed. Right now, it's almost nothing. Should be about $30 a ton of CO2. But there is a good possibility. The Growing Climate Solution Act of 2020, introduced by Senator Brown and Stabenow and Graham and Whitehouse, they talk about agriculture and forestry sectors with having large potential to serve as a critical climate solution. And their resolution also suggested that at scale, agriculture and land use practices can sequester carbon at as low as $10 per metric ton of CO2, making it the most cost-effective carbon sequestration policy. Therefore, I think if we consider carbon value of the inherent ecosystem services at about $120, $130 per metric ton, that comes to about $35 per ton of CO2. That means if a farmer sequesters half a ton of carbon per hectare, they should be given $65 per hectare or $26 per acre. If a farmer sequesters 1/3 of a ton per hectare, that's about $43 per hectare or $18 per acre. That could be part of the farm bill. Ecosystem services. This is not a trading of credit. That depends on demand and supply. We did not succeed with demand supply part because we had no control on what we can burn fossil fuel wise. Therefore, although there was a plenty of supply of land, the demand was not there. But if we follow what Europe has, Europe price is $35. It's 25 euro a ton of CO2. That comes to about $30 per ton of CO2. So that is possible. So I'm thinking about Soil Health Act. And we have something based on a conservation package, IPMIN, crop residue, and other things. I could think about, we have a Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act. You cannot have clean water and clean air without Healthy Soil Act. So we need a Healthy Soil Act through payments for ecosystem services, through the policy incentive. So that is what I want to talk to you today. And Cindy, thank you so much for the opportunity. I will be glad to answer any question. I'll try.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lau. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. We do have some questions here, and I will try to start with one. This individual was wondering, does your soil continue to sequester carbon? At some point, does the tank get full, or does it sequester so much that, you know, after 15 years of no-till, or my soil organic matter increased slowly, but after the 15 years, it leveled off?
I don't know whether you can see my cup here.
I can.
How much water more can I put in the cup? It is the amount that I have drank out of it already. So this cup has a fixed capacity. So soil is the same way. Soil was full of carbon. The cup was full when we converted from prairie or trees into agricultural land. Most of the soil in the Midwest has lost about 1/3 of what existed before. Soils of Africa, Asia have lost 75, 80%. So we can only put that much back. So the answer is no, you cannot always continue. You will reach a certain maximum. But sometimes we can put something on top of it to increase the capacity. That depends on what the original soil was. Let's take the example, soils of dry climates, southwestern United States. They did not have enough water. So in natural ecosystem, because they didn't have water, there's not much carbon. So adding water will add more carbon than it ever existed. You can also take soils which are acidic, and soils have no phosphorus in them. And now if you supply phosphorus, its ability to hold more and produce more carbon can also be increased. So in some soils, yes, you can go beyond the natural level. In the other soils, you can only get up to what it was under prairie or under trees.
Originality. Okay, excellent. Are there any standardized techniques for measuring soil resilience since the year 1997? What are they, and who are they led by?
I wrote an article in 1997, How to Measure Soil Resilience. It was published in the Royal Society. I can send you a copy of that. I think I didn't send it. Soil resilience to what? Is it a resilience to erosion? Is it a resilience to biotic stresses like diseases and pests? Is it a resilience to compaction? So we have to define that. Resilience against what? And then we can see, let's say that we are talking about resilience against emission of greenhouse gases offsetting. So key indicator of that resilience is soil organic carbon. Yes, I can measure soil organic carbon. If it is about resilience against water retention, drought, yes, I can measure plant available water capacity. I can measure how it can be increased by increasing organic matter. So define soil resilience. If it's a climate, then it is a mitigation of greenhouse gases emission, and I can do that. So always define resilience against what, and then we can identify key properties and monitor them.
Okay. Right.
And we also have to then define what are the critical limits. For example, I mentioned organic matter content between 3 to 4%. Bulk density about 1.67 is the maximum. So if you have a very high value already and you want to bring it down to 1.2, we have to understand those limits. Plant available water, nutrient reserve, they all have limits. So as long as we know resilience against what and what key properties, yes, we can measure them.
Okay. What are your thoughts on biochar, Dr. Riddell?
Today, there was a very good question. Biochar concept came from an article that was written by a good friend of mine, late. His name is Wim Sombroek, a scientist from Holland. He also worked with FAO. And he was working in the Amazon, where he looked at the soil called black soils of the Amazon. He called them Terra Preta do Indio, the Amazon soils of the American Indian, the black soils. And he found that they were because of the biochar. The soil contained some charcoals and ash around the homestead. So the idea was that these Amazon soils, which are very infertile, and therefore by adding biochar, by adding some kind of organic matter, soil's capacity, nutrient cycling improved. Today alone, I read an article this morning that maybe there is another theory of formation of those terra preta soils. Not that these guys 1,000 years ago knew that biochar was a good thing, but there were some other processes leading. Whatever the reason, adding biochar is a good idea, but please make sure that the residue which you are converting to biochar is spare. For example, if somebody wants to take away the crop residue and expose the soil to erosion and go and make a biochar and then bring the biochar back, and during that transition, soil is exposed to climatic elements, I'm not sure that's a good idea. So the residue for poultry manure, yes, we have a lot available in some places and it's a liability. So maybe perhaps we can convert it to biochar. Maybe sometime livestock manure, we could use it. But the residue management to take away from cropland, in most cases, in some cases, it may be okay to take away some, 30%, 40%, but please make sure that soil gets fair share of crop residue. That residue is food for earthworms, microorganisms. Biochar is not food for those organisms. So to starve the microorganism and other animals in soil is not a good idea. They'll starve you also then.
Yeah, great. That's a good way to put that. There's a question here about the carbon sequestration, and it said, should we pay the producers for past carbon sequestration? And if so, what records should be required, or how would they do that? So people that have been sequestering.
Those who have been sequestering, we can thank them that they have been great steward, but if they are to be rewarded, then we have to have some baseline. Where did they start from? So if they have a record that they started when their soil contained 1% organic matter and now it is 1.5%, then of course that's justified that they did sequester and they should be paid for it. But having good records is very important. Without record and claiming that I'm sequestering so much, it's a market. So you are going to claim for something, and there must be a record that the yes sequestration. It can be plus minus 5%,
Mhm.
some range, but without having those record, and I think in many cases farmers do get their soil tested
Mhm.
for carbon, phosphorus, nitrogen, nutrient, and so forth. The only problem with generic testing is that they do not have information on bulk density. That's the weight and volume relationship of the soil. So
Mhm.
without bulk density, it is very difficult to convert data on percent carbon, which normally soil test lab gives you, into so many tons of carbon. That you require depth density measurement of carbon and bulk density. And sometimes that's not available. But yes, I think personally, I believe that all farmers who serve the community and nation and the world as a whole in improving the soil resources and the environment must be rewarded. Yes.
I had one here. He had a little connection issue and just wondering how much carbon should we be able to sequester per acre per year with soil health practices?
I did give those value. Average for the Midwest was about 500 pounds per acre per year, 500 kilogram per hectare, but it can be as much as double that amount. For example, in Ohio, I was monitoring if you did straight no-till on a sloping land, probably 500 pounds per acre per year. If you grew a cover crop in the rotation in the off season, it may become about 750 to 800 pounds. And if I also put grazing and cattle manure recycling, maybe as much as 1,000 pound per acre per year or 1,000 kilogram per hectare per year. So those are the I have heard many people talk about much higher rates, and if they have and they can prove that this is what they got, I salute them. But
Mhm.
what I am showing is many experimental data that we have.
Right. Yeah. And for those people that maybe didn't have a connection, we will have this recorded so you can watch Dr. Lyle's presentation again and
Very
pick
good.
up on some of those numbers. I have
I
a
can,
quick one here.
some of the papers I gave you give these numbers also,
Yeah.
and I can send some more paper if somebody wants.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, Dr. Lyle had sent us some PDFs of some different writings, and we do have them on the Whova site, so you would be able to download those and read those too. A quick question here, since our time is running out, is loss on ignition soil organic matter standard testing the best baseline to use for sequestering carbon? If not, what is?
Loss on ignition, I should explain to everybody what it means is you take a soil and you burn it at 900 degrees centigrade. So you wait before burning, which was, let's say, air dry soil, and then wait again after. So whatever is lost, you think it's organic matter. In some cases it is, and the other cases not. If the soil is from a humid climate like Ohio, where the uh, pH of the soil is 7 or below, yes, most of the material lost is probably organic matter. Maybe some water, which was contained with minerals, but mostly. But if you are from southwestern US, where the climate is dry and it has the pH is 8 or 7.5, and it has carbonates and bicarbonates, in addition to organic matter, then you are comparing apple with pineapple, because now you have carbonates also in that. So soil with carbonates, you must correct for the carbonate concentration by a separate analysis. Otherwise, the error is too much. If the pH is 7 or below, dry combustion is
Mhm.
okay. If the pH is more than 7 from drier climate, no, correction need to be made.
Okay. Do you have time for one more?
Yes, I have time.
Okay. All right. In a pasture dominated by cool season grasses, worth the time and money to no-till in multi-species cover crops to get some diversity started? Or is it best just to continue with managing grazing and let the soil heal with it by itself?
When a soil is compacted, and I have come across in my own experiment, well, where soil is very compacted, bulk density is 1.6. I wanted to grow alfalfa this season, since September, since October, November, so I could get lower compaction. I did not succeed. So somehow, if a soil compaction is a problem, direct seeding, no-till may be very difficult. So doing chisel plowing, para plowing without inversion and loosening the soil so that it can establish multiple cover crop may be a good idea. Do not do inversion plow, moldboard plow, but para plow. It's a plow that subsoiler that goes about 1.5 foot or 2 feet deep, and it loosens the soil, lifts it up, and put it back, uh, and then keep the ground covered, crop residue. So that combination may work. So mechanical loosening a compact soil and then growing cover crop, that will then start having a process of no-till farming. And
Okay.
that, and even then, in some cases, I was working in Africa where we did not have freeze thaw. In
Mhm.
Ohio, we have. There, every 4 or 5 years, I had to do what I just explained. But until I found a cover crop which I was growing, it was called pigeon pea. It's a legume which is eaten also quite widely. Uh, I have not seen it grown in US anywhere. So it had a very deep root system, couple of feet, and it could. So if I and it's perennial, if I could let it grow for a couple of years, it will loosen up the soil. So I was in good shape. But if you don't have that, then loosening mechanically without inversion is a good choice.
Okay. This one is kind of back to when you're talking about sequestering carbon. Will there be unintended consequences where producers would use up the carbon plow and then go back to sequestering carbon? So would there be
I
some?
think, yeah, I think if the question, if I interpret it right, if the farmer knew that if their soil was depleted more, like if I knew that somebody was going to fill up free, I may immediately take it more and then, okay, please fill it up. I think our farmers are very shrewd, very intelligent, very nature conscious, very steward of the soil, natural resources. I don't think any farmer would intentionally deplete soil to benefit economically. I think it would be an insult to think that that can happen. Um, Farmers I know are great people. I salute them. I think that's the kind of farmers to be proud of. And in our country here and other places, I really think farmers are great steward. I already mentioned that they're great steward of land. They are not going to undermine natural resources simply to make a quick buck. No, I think I don't think that is a good option. No,
Yeah.
our farmers are too good.
They, yes, we think so in South Dakota that they are. They have
Yeah,
the good heart and want to take care of the land.
and
So
I'm very proud of them. I take
mhm.
to 2 or 3 farmers in Ohio, my visitors from China, Australia, South Asia, Africa, and they are so great. I can't do as good agriculture as they do. So they're very
Well,
good.
we really want to thank you for your time. We kind of ran over, but I really appreciate your time and appreciate your insight and all of the papers. I think those are very valuable resources that those in attendance, the students and the producers will be able to have a reference for. So,
And those who have more questions, they want to contact me directly or through you, they can. And I'll try to reply and
yeah,
provide any information that I may have.
perfect. Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Dr. Lau. We
Bye.
appreciate that. Yep, you have a great day.
Bye.
All right. Sarah, if you want to bring up our wheel, we'll do that quick before we break here for lunch. Okay. Kind of fitting for this presentation, we have AgVi's soil tests that are valued about $350. So we will spin the wheel and see who is the lucky winner of that. Adam Roth. All right, congratulations. All right, well, thank you everyone. Our morning session has come to a close. We had a lot of different information. Some really exciting things are coming up. Lauren Steinlega will be right after lunch, so grab some lunch and we will back here at 12:30.